The dawn rises over a world ruled by kings and blood. Empires stretch their banners. Each heartbeat echoed through history Prelen, a prelude to carnage. The first arrow cuts the sky, a whisper of death before the storm.
When the blade sang, gods watched in silence. In victory or defeat, the soil never stays clean.
The gods admired defiance more than triumph.
And wrath rode upon hooves of thunder.
As the sun sets behind burning hills, a new empire rises, born not from peace, but from every war ends the same way, with silence and the smell of iron.
He had won everything for Mang, and lost the reason why.
The gods do not bless kings, they test them. The living envy the dead, for they have found their peace. From ruin, nations remember their name.
The road to the throne is paved with the bones of brothers.
In blood they found order, in sacrifice they found power.
He wore not gold, but the weight of every man he buried. Even the sky trembled, for power had found its next vessel.
Thus began an empire, not of peace, but eternal war.
A kingdom born in ash began to stretch its shadow across the earth.
The horizon whispered resistance, and the Emperor listened.
Another flag in the wind, another name soon to vanish from history.
The sky itself became his weapon.
Walls burn, but the will behind them burns brighter.
They rode not to win, but to die with their names unbroken.
And with one night's fire, a civilization was erased. He did not conquer land, as Corona. He conquered time.
Those who survived carried both the weight of life and the curse of memory. The flag rises not for peace, but to remind the conquered who still breathes.
From the ruins of defeat, the seeds of vengeance were sown.
Every spark was a heartbeat of defiance and clean. Every blade, a whisper of rebellion. Peace was enforced, not granted blade. Silence was a weapon sharper than any sword.
Hope travels quietly, but its footsteps awaken storms.
He saw the world as a board of conquest pine, but every move carved new ghosts. Far from the Emperor's gaze, the wind began to carry the scent of rebellion. And so, from two flames set, one of power, one of freedom tant, a new war began to breathe. In the darkest hours, vigilance fades, and rebellion wakes.
Freedom does not march, it creeps.
Revenge finds its voice in silence.
One breath, one shot, one beginning.
The first soldier fell before he could scream.
And the gate that once kept them out, now open to fire.
Freedom is never light. It weighs as much as the doors it breaks. They rode with Fury's chase, born of loss, sharpened by fate. And with that charge, belong to rebellion.
For even in glory, kings cannot escape the sound of revolt. For one fleeting breath, they believed the dawn was theirs.
But every fire that burns bright casts a longer shadow.
The whispers of rebellion reached the Iron Throne before the smoke had settled. He did not shout, for true wrath needs no voice. And with each strike, the promise of vengeance was carved into the night.
The Empire did not fall. It awoke.
Steel would soon speak louder than mercy. And he rode not for victory, Beeling, but for silence.
Peace is the sweetest illusion, right before the thunder.
And as the sun climbed, so did the Empire.
The earth itself seemed to warn them now. The storm of men was near.
What they saw was not an army. It was a flood of vengeance.
Each rider carried not just a blade, but centuries of Empire's pride. Wood groaned, metal screamed, tuning the march of civilization's wrath.
They had won the gate, but not the war! Even beneath the ground, war finds a way to echo.
They aimed not for victory, but for defiance. And with a single gesture, history held its breath. The heavens themselves seemed to burn. And thus began the Empire's return.
The fortress that once stood proud, their king, now screamed through the voices of fire. They entered not as men, but as ghosts of iron and vengeance. Every heartbeat became a farewell. Even gods of stone could not stand against the will of steel.
He had fought for freedom, and found only fate.
In war, even silence kills. He had conquered the world decay, but buried his soul within it. And with that single breath of fire, a nation ended. Even the mighty must walk through what they've destroyed.
No victory is ever clean. No end ever pure.
Only nature remains to witness the folly of men. He had won everything and lost what made him human. For every victory, 1,000 names fade. Glory, written in the language of ashes. When the fighting ends, the emptiness begins. From ruin. And so ends the Age of Steel, where men played gods, and gods fell silent.
Only echoes remain.
Time heals all wounds, but remembers all wars. Some wars end only when the last man forgets.
Rain fell, not as Mertz, but as memory.
Every empire drowns in its own reflection.
From silence, the world begins again.
For every sword that stands, a story remains. Thus the cycle turns, flipped from war to wind. This was the Age of Steel, and its silence